Ruetoo's Corrupting Fever Gladiator. Champion. This build's got it all. And it does it all. Okay? You want to blast some maps? We got you. You want to be able to kill some bosses? You'll get there. This thing's got speed. It's got defense, avoidance, mitigation, recovery, and it'll scale to be enough damage, but it's a little low at the start, okay? You got to give somewhere. And if you don't want to die every single map, this is the build for you. And it's probably the build for me as well. I think this is going to be the one I play on League Start because, I just want to chill out because, man, I'm just going to want to relax on League Start. I'm going to want to play some POE. I'm not going to lie, dude. This video is not going to have that high effort editing that all the other ones did. It probably should because it's a League Starter, but Mr. Maxroll called me up, ring a ding ding, asked me if I could do poison seismic traps. So feeling a little bit crunchy right now. So you want to see me do some flips? Boom, there you go. You want some explosions? Pow, look at that. Corrupting Fever Champion. Boom, boom, boom. I got 3, all right? Those were within budget. But now we're out of budget for explosions. We got one more flip. Save it to the end. But I mean, look at it, dude. It's a map blaster. You just take this build into maps. It's got kinetic blast. You don't need hemophilia right away. You don't even need Poet's Pen. You just have kinetic blast and corrupting fever. And then you're just reaping the boss. Once you get some of these uniques, once it starts coming online, we got your hemophilia, some Sappho's frame action. Yeah, fuck suppression. We got that spell block on deck. So the gist of the build is you got this gem called Kinetic Blast. You shoot your wand, it does a little explosion. When that projectile hits something or pierces something, it does another little explosion. We use that to apply Corrupting Fever. Physical damage over time. It's pretty tight, man. We also bleed with our Kinetic Blast, and we use hemophilia. We got some fizz pops for cheap, and we're still able to play champ. Now, if you want to play a map blaster, I think this is probably one of the best ones you could play. I gotta warn you, the damage isn't too good right away, but you'll warm up to it. The boss takes an extra 10-15 seconds, but hey, if you're clearing the map 30 seconds, a minute faster than you otherwise would be, that time's made up. And you know what you can't do? On most builds, you can't take that clear speed and increase it too much, right? You can't take that notch, go all the way to 10. This build starts at like 7, 8, 9. You max it all the way once you get hemophilia. And yeah, the damage isn't that crazy right away. But you know what? You buy a cluster, you get some fizz dot jewels, buy level 21 gems, a cool fractured wand, and now your damage is fine. Your clear's insane, and your ass ain't dying, and you're not falling over like some wet piece of paper. There's no cast on death memes here, okay? We don't play those builds. We don't even use determination. You know what you do instead to get your physical damage reduction? You pop adrenaline with your corrupting fever. You get some endurance charges on kill from the tree, and on the bosses, you use your enduring cry. And we take that 100% increased charge duration, so you can keep your endurance charges through the boss fight, through the map, everything. Boom, there you go. You get AK armor, you get some endurance charges. That's good enough. There's not much more to say, dude. So we're just gonna get into the POB, because I gotta do like 3 more builds after this one, okay? I'm just gonna do that thing where I'm yapping in front of this is how we level, right? We're gonna go over the leveling. We're gonna go over the skill gems, and I'm gonna go over the gearing with you. And then you'll be sent on your merry way. 3.20, best league ever, or I've gotta eat a sock. This whole POB, by the way, was made by Ruetoo. So make sure you go and thank him. If you're gonna level this build, how you been leveling builds? All right, not much has changed. You start with Splitting Steel, you get your totems, the banner, you link maim to your totem, you get Leap Slam and Frostblink, you start blasting. And at level 12, you're still gonna go Helix. Now you can go Shattering Steel instead, but I think Helix is still gonna be a very great option. Helix was, you have to keep in mind, Helix was pretty busted before, okay? That stuff was real good. Now it's going to kind of just be in line like other things are. But if it, I don't know, maybe it feels really bad. Like, what do I know? Okay. Maybe it feels like crap. Just play Shattering Steel then, right? You're going to do that until you go Blood Rage, Herald of Ash, Herald of Purity, you start blasting. And then you're going to go Leaf Slam, Faster Attacks in Act 2. You get Poacher's Mark Act 3. The only thing that changes really is once you get Labyrinth done. So once you do normal lab, you can start to proc your Adrenaline. Adrenaline, it's a huge buff. You get 100% increased damage, 25 attack, cast, and move speed, and you get 10 physical damage reduction. You get free Intimidation, which is like 10% more damage. It's not bad. So it's kind of just a lot of damage and a lot of speed. And you're going to proc that by using a lower level Corrupting Fever. There's going to be some mental math that you gotta do. Sometimes you're gonna need to link life tap to it. Sometimes you won't have to do like a 4th link. Sometimes you only need 3. Sometimes eventually you're gonna need that 4th. And then you hit a level, it might be too much. Really, you can't go wrong with just linking Corrupting Fever to life tap to just get the cost huge. And then you can tinker with the 3rd and 4th links depending on what you need. But yeah, it's really not that bad. You kind of just like look at it, and you always want Corrupting Fever to be just as close to taking away 50% of your life as possible, because your blood rage is going to take like a little bit more, right? But really, you know, sometimes it takes a little bit more, sometimes it takes less. If you got to press Corrupting Fever twice to proc it every 20 seconds, then, you know, sometimes you just got to do that. But you're still going to level with Spectral Helix with Shattering Steel. It just depends whatever feels better for you. I'd probably just still do Helix, because Helix is just insane and it's still going to be pretty good. Your auras are just going to be Determ, Herald of Purity, War Banner, Herald of Ash. Got Leap Slam still doing Protector, because you're still Helix and you're still using Blood Rage. Now, when you swap for the leveling, it's going to be Blood Aqueducts. And when you swap, you have to make sure that you have been leveling Corrupting Fever, which is pretty easy because you've been using it, and Reap. If you haven't been leveling a Reap, your damage is going to be donkey. It's just going to be doo-doo, okay? You're going to not do any single target damage, and it's going to be really bad, and you're going to struggle with that build until your Reap is leveled up, until it's caught up with you. So just do yourself a favor and level a Reap. I mean, hell, you can forget about Reap all the way until Act 6, and then you hit Lily, and you're like, oh, dude, I better pick up Reap. Just do it then. There you go. Then you just swap over to a Corrupting Fever and Kinetic Blast setup. So the links here, you're going to want to make sure you get ready. You're going to want to make sure you have 1 blue, 1 green, 1 red somewhere. So a chrome item. You can go without faster attacks for a little bit. That'll be okay. Eventually, obviously, you'd want faster attacks. Your Corrupting Fever is going to be 2 reds, a green, and a blue, or depending on life tap and whatnot, it can be 3 reds. You kind of just have to figure it out, but really it should just be these 4 here, because eventually your Corrupting Fever is going to hit a level where you don't need life tap to boost it up so much. And so at that point, you can save life tap until you have more life and add that as your 5 link. Your Reap's going to be 2 red, a green, and a blue. So it's going to be exactly the same as your Corrupting Fever. So you need 2 sets of 2 red, a green, and a blue. And then your auras, your shield charge, and everything else, you can kind of just fit in everywhere. Again, it's just 2 red, a green, and a blue, and then a chrome item. Those are the links that you need for the swap at Blood Aqueducts. And these are the gems you're going to be using all the way from tier 1 maps up until you hit reds. You're kind of just blasting with that. So we're just going to go over the trees quick. You don't have to do it too much. It's pretty easy, right? It's Helix standard stuff. You're kind of just picking up the Onslaught so that you have Onslaught on kill. You get Rage with your Helix, so you're kind of blasting, and you just boost yourself all the way over to Resolute Technique. After you pick up some 2-hand, a little bit of life. Once you get Resolute Technique, you can start filling your tree out a little bit more. So you're going to get life. You're going to get the reservation efficiency so you can fit all your auras in. And then you kind of just get to pick up the life that's along the way, and then the damage that's along the way, on the way to Resolute Technique. Eventually, you'd save this until before maps because you won't have access to too much minion damage, but eventually you get Spiritual Aid. There's not too many sources of damage you can get on the tree with this build right away. So being able to pick up this and start getting stuff like minion damage on your wand or from the tree is going to be really helpful in making sure you've got enough damage. And then once you hit Blood Aqueduct, you're going to do a pretty big swap. I would start by unspecking the axe nodes and these 2-hand nodes here and these 2 bottom ones right there. You're going to have to connect this area first before you do all that as well. And then saving these starter nodes for last, just because from the respecs you'll have while leveling, those free respecs, you should do the quests and get all of those, but you're still going to be shy a few, right? So you can start respecking out of this area, making sure you put the points in here first, but you'll have to use a few regrets to get these last ones out of there. And then after that BA respec, you're going to start finalizing what is going to be your tree. You're going to get the endurance charge stuff because we're not using determination while mapping right away, so you need that physical damage reduction. So we're getting the endurance charge on kill and the min. We're getting the charge duration, so they last while using Enduring Cry while bossing. You got that extra charge here, another charge here, another one there, so we're getting boosted on those endurance charges. Getting some jewel sockets that you can get some pretty free damage. Getting the last little aura wheel here so we can fit all the auras in. Mainly it's going to be like Malevolence, Herald of Purity, War Banner, so we can just get a bunch of our damage. And the big thing with this build is early on is you're going to want to get like an 8 or 12 passive cluster jewel, and you're going to want to get jewels. You got to get a lot of jewels. so that you have enough damage. So you need global fizz, you need fizz.multi, or you just get generic dot multi, you get increased damage. You know, you try to just get at least 2 modules. So in the POB, it's global fizz and fizz.multi. It's cream of the crop. If you can get those, that's big. If you can only get another damage mod, then you just do that. But just at least make sure you get one of the damage multipliers, like dot multi. So you would get generic dot multi or fizz dot multi, and then whatever else you can. And this is going to be really important. You don't have to get 8 passives right away, right? But it's really important that you have this cluster. Roll it with like 1 or 2 mods. You can use some fossils. Like fossils are going to be your best bet. Otherwise, you got to use a new crappy Harvest Reforge, which kind of just stinks. I'm not going to lie. I tried rolling clusters with Harvest Reforge. It's so bad. You have to use fossils. You just got to do jagged fossils. So try to get a couple and, you know, just hit 2 notables. So at least you can pick 1 up along the way. You don't have to go triple right away. Like even if you get like 1, like whatever, you can just scoop it for the extra point. One thing about, so we're going to talk about the leveling gear really quick. The most important thing is just doing the rustic sash recipe while you're leveling. You got to make sure you're up on your upgrades for your axes. So anytime there's a nice new axe base, so that's things like despot axes, Vol axes, double axes, even the hatchets and whatnot. These are all, when you see the new base, right? You can always tell too, because it has a new level requirement. That's probably going to be as close to your level as possible, right? That's when you want to do the swap. You take one of these, you take a normal weapon with a magic or rare rustic sash. So you transmute it or you use an essence, and you vendor that with a blacksmith whetstone, and then you get back that weapon with fizz damage on it. It's mega important you do that. If you don't do that, you're gonna miss a lot of your damage while leveling, so it's super important. Otherwise, everything else is just resistance gear. Anytime you can, craft resistance on your gear for 1 transmute orb. It makes it super, super easy. It just makes it really easy to level through the game if you do that. All right, so now for mapping stuff, right? We already covered the mapping tree with the cluster jewel and whatnot. This is what you use for white and yellow maps. For skill gems, we kind of went over it. You've got all your auras and whatnot. You have your KB set up, but there is one thing different, and that is going to be the frenzy and the maim. So don't swap to these for map bosses, but you'd swap to them when you're doing your Exarch or your Eater, right? When you're doing your pinnacle bosses, or eventually when you get to stuff like Maven or your Uber Elder, you're going to swap from Kinetic Blast to frenzy and maim. So you would just swap the maim for life tap, and you'd swap the frenzy for GMP, and then you just take Kinetic Blast out. And you do this so that, because you don't need Kinetic Blast and all those explosions anymore, but what you do need are frenzy charges from frenzy. So you get a frenzy charge every time you hit the enemy with this. And when you hit them, you're also going to be maiming them 30% of the time, which makes them take another 10% damage. So swapping here is it's like a 20-something% damage increase. So it is pretty substantial, and it's worth it to just swap a couple of gems out when you have to do your like first quest boss. But just don't do this for map bosses, right? It's not gonna be worth it. Everything else is like as simple as it is, right? You're kind of just doing cast damage taken. You've got Enduring Cry that you use on bosses for your endurance charges. You put Blood Rage on left mouse button, so it's always triggering, get that extra attack speed, and those frenzy charges. For your gear, you're just gonna use like a try to get like a screaming, shrieking, deafening fear essence, and just throw that puppy on a calling wand. Don't get anything other than a calling wand. Calling has a low int requirement. If you get anything higher, it's gonna be a pain to put on. Otherwise, you can just throw it on a random other wand, but if you do calling, it's got that minion damage, which pairs well with our spiritual aid. And then you just craft fizz.multi. Sapphiles might be expensive. It's kind of a low priority until you get to higher yellows and you start to get to red maps. Then you kind of want to scoop one up. But this is nice because it just gives a chunk of spell block, gives some spell damage, and it gives +4 to all of your max reses. Instead of this, you could just scoop +1 level of fizz spells if you just want to do like a little bit more damage. Sapphile's pretty low priority. The high priority thing is going to be Mark of Submission. This is really important. Picking one of these up should be priority number 1. You'll see this with the Maxroll article. When I give you the step-by-step, Mark of Submission is pretty important because you're going to put vulnerability in here, and that's going to give you extra bleed chance against enemies. And if they're bleeding, then they're going to be exploding and taking extra physical damage. But they're going to be exploding because the next best upgrade as well is going to be Hemophilia, which gives you your bleed explosion. So it's really important that you have your Mark of Submission and you have all your gear set up where you don't need this ring slot for res anymore. and your gloves for res, so that you can put hemophilia on as soon as you get it. Now these are pretty expensive, and you don't need them to clear white and yellow maps, but you will want them once you start getting to like T12, T13 maps, and you really want to just kind of like pop the whole pack and kill the rare monster right away. Now for early mapping, it's like unnecessary. I wouldn't buy these right away. I would just, you know, put Mark of Submission on. I'd maybe like save for something else. I mean, if you got the money, you'd buy them. But if they're like 30, 40 chaos right away and you're in white maps and you got lucky or something, like you really don't need these. You can probably put your money towards something else. Maybe you pick up like a 6-link body armor base or something. Maybe you try to snipe something, but, or you get your clusters, right? I would get the cluster and your rare jewels figured out. Hemophilia is like kind of low priority until you hit reds. And that's going to be the same with Saphals here. Everything else is just going to be generic stuff. Your body armor doesn't have to be a 6-link right away, because we can use a 4-link reap and a 4 or 5-link corrupting fever. Eventually you will want a 6-link, but it doesn't have to be your first body armor. You can just have like a 5-link body armor, and that's going to do plenty, because corrupting fever can't be 6-linked right away. What you would do later on, and what we will do, is once you hit red maps, you're going to take your corrupting fever and your reap, and you're going to put them in the same 6-link. So now you have a double 5-link. You have them both in your body armor. And you do this because corrupting fever is going to cost too much life if you 6-link it, and it just is, it's kind of a crappy 6-link no matter what. So instead, you just take the reap out of your gloves, you get some extra sockets, you put it at the bottom of your corrupting fever setup. Now you got a double 5-link in your body armor. This opens your sockets up for something like a Stormbrand Culling Strike life tap setup. And you do this, especially once you hit red maps, this is nice, because your Stormbrand is going to tick, tick, tick on the boss, every tick applying corrupting fever. It's going to keep your corrupting fever buff up, which is why you'd link it to life tap, so that you can keep those stacks up and keep the buff that lets you put the corrupting fever on the boss up. And then you get Culling Strike. It's like 10% damage. So it kind of just helps with your uptime, and then you've got your double 5-link. So that's what you do with those extra links. Same thing here. You just would only do the Frenzy for bosses, but everything else is the same. Still got Molten Shell, Enduring Cry, Shield Charge. You got your auras. Not much different in the skill gems. As far as the passive tree goes, you're kind of just scooping up life, extra jewel sockets, and then doing your Uber Lab. For the Ascendancy, you obviously go Adrenaline first, and then you get Unstoppable Hero, and then Fortify. And then for your very last one, you're going to pick up Inspirational for all that aura effect. As far as items go, your next big upgrade is going to be kind of just fleshing out your gear. So obviously you got to have that 6-link. You're going to really want like a dot multi amulet. If you can get interrolled on there, or another stat like Dex, that would be big. And then you kind of just get a res, and then you craft life, or you get life and then you craft a res. You're going to anoint this node up here for the extra 15 dot multi. This dot multi is pretty big. The big change here is just going to be picking up a Doriani's Invitation, so that you can have physical damage leached as life. This is a big bonus of being able to use Reap on the build, is that you can leech your life back versus only using Corrupting Fever. So Reap is going to do enough hit damage where you get that Fizz Leech. So you have to make sure when you're buying this belt that you buy the physical version. So it has increased physical damage, or you can search for Doriani's Invitation with physical damage leached as life. Not physical attack damage, right? That can roll on jewelry and whatnot, but this is an attack. It's a spell, so you have to just get physical damage leached as life on this slot. There's not many places you can pick this mod up. You can get it on an amulet, but it has to be influenced, and then you're probably giving up dot multi. You could get it on a Glorious Vanity, but now you have to figure out how to search for those. You have to snipe one that's already well rolled, and then, you know, you gotta pay that price for it. So it's much easier to just kind of put this belt on. Although there are other sources, if you want to be a little crafty, you can figure those out, and they are good. It's just not an option that everybody is going to be able to use. So I have to be giving options that every single person can rely on. So with some of this stuff, you know, you can get a little fancy with it, dude. As far as big upgrades in the wand department, what you'd want to do is you're going to want to make an alternate character. You want to start a new character. You go to Hillik, you kill him, you become level 2, and you go to Nessa and you buy one of those driftwood wands that's item level 2. It's really important that it's item level 2. and you take that item level 2 on, and you use Screaming or Shrieking Essences of Fear. So those are the minion ones. And because it's item level 2, it locks out a lot of those higher item level mods from being able to be rolled. And so it takes very few of these essences for you to land +1 level of all fizz with your feared essences. And now you have a +1 with 58 increased damage, and you can craft fizz.multi on it. So it's a really easy way to get a pretty big upgrade early on when you normally just can't get +1 fizz, you know, and a big damage mod. Now you can, and it's pretty cheap too. The only other big mods that you want to watch out for is getting physical damage reduction and crafting spell block on your chest piece, and then getting reduced effective shock and a chill crafted on your boots, so that when you upgrade your Pantheon, you got like 90% reduced effective chill on you. And then with this 60%, you know, you're going to have 100% reduced effective shock on you, making you pretty much immune to shocks, which is really nice. Then you just got to make sure you don't neglect your chaos res much, and you're ready to start farming and blasting, dude. Start doing those harbingers, maybe pop some legions and start blasting off. At this point, if you want, you could buy a Poet's Pen, and then you wouldn't have to cast your Reap. You would put Exsanguinate, Brutality, and Reap in there. But historically, Poet's Pens have been very expensive, and so it's easier to have this base and not have to buy a Poet's Pen than it is to tell people to just buy a Poet's Pen right away. Now for the end game, the big one. You've still, unless you bought Poet's Pen, you still got your Corrupting Fever and your Reap setup. Now you have Stormbrand, Vortex, Life Tap, Culling Strike. You put Vortex on left mouse button instead of Blood Rage, because at this point you don't really need those Frenzy charges to squeeze out as much damage while you're mapping, and you'll have the Frenzy charges against bosses when you need them because you'll use Frenzy with your Kinetic Blast. Vortex is going to always keep your Corrupting Fever buff up, so you never ever have it drop because you haven't spent life recently. And then Stormbrand's going to do the same thing it's always been, is just applying a bunch of Corrupting Fever stacks to the boss. Super easy, and culling them. All your auras are the same, Kinetic Blast setup's the same, still swapping to Frenzy. At this point, what you'd want to do is you want to do Varician Research, and you want to white socket your boots so that you can add Frenzy when you need to. You can add Maim, and you can still have Life Tab there, and you won't have to like recolor boots if you want to be. So you just don't have to, you know, dig around with that. As far as your auras go, these can be swapped out a little bit, but really you're gonna want to have Tempest Shield and Pride. Tempest Shield giving all the spell block you need to now cap yourself, because instead of suppression, you're gonna be having 75 spell block. Pride, you obviously are always going to run. And then you can kind of choose between Vitality and Herald of Purity. If you get a little more RMR, you'd have to get like a little bit on a jewel, or you would be, yeah, you just have to get like one rolled on one of your jewels, because that is now a jewel mod, 2 to 3% reservation. But Vitality is pretty nice. It's just a cool pickup. Just have some life regen, and it's easier to fit in without having to do Herald of Purity, and it gives you a lot of life regen because you have so much aura effect from being a champion. So you get like 400 life regen from this. It's pretty nice to have 1,000 life regen. And then you have like another 1,000 leech from your Reap. Like that's 2,000 recovery. That is pretty killer. Everything else is the same. You still got Molten Shell and War Banner and all that. What changes a little bit is your weapons. So now you've got a +1 Fizz Wand. All the crafting notes for this is going to be in the Maxroll article. I'm not going to go over each and every single piece here. You guys can go check that out. I'll probably put them in the notes though too, all right, to be a nice guy. But here is where you're going to want to start finalizing your gear. So you're going to start investing into like pretty nice pieces. And this league, that means getting fractured stuff. So you're going to buy fractured pieces, or you're going to fracture orb your own if the fractured orbs are cheap enough, or the fractured items that are already fractured are too expensive. You just farm some harbingers, get your own fracturing orbs, and you start fracturing away. What you're going to want to do for most of these pieces, right? The TLDR is you get a suffix, you fracture that suffix, you use an essence to roll another resistance or a stat, and then you use that essence, right? So now you have 2 mods, 2 suffixes locked in. Use it to get that third, and you're rolling that third suffix. And then you're just going to use Eldritch Currency or whatever to get life, and then you finish it with a craft. And then you would get your implicits. So that's what you do with this helmet here. Pretty easy. I told you I wouldn't go over crafting, but I just did. I had to. It's so easy. It's formulaic. Skin of the Lords. It's big. It's big. It's huge. Because it gives you the keystone, you can save like 1 point there. It's not that big a deal to save that 1 point. But what is a big deal is that +2 to socketed gems and 100 global defense. So that +2 to socketed gems is also going to boost your empower by +2 levels, which is really big. So it kind of gives +2 to your corrupting fever and reap, and then another +2 to your corrupting fever and reap by giving +2 to your empower. It's wild. It's good. It's good stuff. Hemophilia. This one's for the YouTube homies, okay? Hemophilia, you can have vulnerability corrupted on it. Now, vulnerability did get nerfed, okay? And potentially, you'd just want to keep using mark on hit to get that extra damage from Vuln. It depends. Maybe you want a little life and some chaos res, the minus mana cost, you might need it. Or you could just get it corrupted here instead of getting a vulnerability on hit. But this is the setup I'm gonna give out right now, because I can't tell all of you to get Vuln corrupted on Hemophilia. There's gonna be like 5 of them for the first week or whatever. So there's not gonna be that many until more Hemophilia start dropping. So I just can't tell everyone to get it. Right, here is the boots with the suffix. You see here, you get +1 fizz locked in, and then you're just rolling stuff with essences on the amulet and on your wand. And then a Vuln on hit, you get Warlord, and you just do cast or reforge until you hit Vuln and life or Vuln and whatever. You know, if you hit good suffixes here, then you'd lock suffix. Craft suffixes cannot be changed. Veiled Chaos, block mana, unveiled life, bing bong. And then you just roll this with Delirium Essence. Oh, I went over all the crafting. All right, the big change here for the Endgame Corrupting Fever Champion is going to be its tree. So now you're going to have double clusters. Your clusters are going to have 3 notables, which are big, and you're going to be filling these with double, triple, or quadruple modded jewels. So most of them are probably going to be like triple for a while, right? You'd go like double dot multi, or you get dot multi and global fizz, and then you fill it with life, or you get another like generic damage mod. You just do something like that. The big thing here is, which is really cute, is you get a very large ring. So this isn't the Uber Cyrus one where it's a massive ring. This is just very large, so it's normal Cyrus. And you use that to save a bunch of points to Spiritual Aid and to get this spell block here, as well as Discipline and Training, which is just a huge value life node. So that's really, really good. It just saves you a lot of points. The next big thing is going to be Glorious Vanity here. And this is why it's so important that you get all of these fractures on all of your gear. It's super, super important. You see we have Chaos Res Fractured, Chaos Res Fractured. You have to have a lot of Chaos resistance because you're going to go Divine Flesh. And you're going to want to go Divine Flesh so that you have no issues anytime you're doing bosses. So this can be stuff like Uber bosses, or anytime you're encountering penetration. So spell block is at like 75. Then you have like 84 Chaos Res. You're taking half of that as elemental damage, half of it as chaos. So when you have a boss like Shaper Balls that do, I think it's like Cold and Lightning Pen, right? Or maybe it's just cold. I don't know. I'm not a hardcore guy. I don't have to figure that stuff out. But the penetration just gets eaten up by you taking half of that damage at chaos, because no boss is having Chaos Pen, right? This makes it really, really, really good against Uber bosses. And it's a huge reason why you'd use Sappho's Frame. It's perfect for this because Sappho's Frame gives you all max res, not just Ellie res. It's also giving you maximum chaos res, and it gives you spell block. Like, it's perfect. It gives you all res spelled. It's literally the perfect shield against bosses and against spell damage. It's so, so good. And this is how you're able to get away with not having spell suppression on this build, is because of those things. Anyways, this is CF Champ. I know it was a little bit of a lazy edit, but it's crunch time, baby. And I gotta start just doing these videos where I'm just talking. So I'll see you guys in the next build guide. Make sure you thank Ruetoo. This is probably what I'm gonna be playing on League Start. It looks really fun. And I'm kind of just looking for a chill map blaster. So I'll see you guys there, all right? Like and sub. Catch you guys later. Bye.